Hello and welcome to Dungeoneered, a podcast dedicated to discussing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Josh.
Let's do this. All right, Josh. So this week we are talking about some sort of dungeon of some kind, I think.
No, we're talking about
Never mind.
We're talking about a creator of dungeons, the world-renowned Acererak.
A what?
Acererak? He is the dude who's on the front of the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Oh, that guy has a name?
Yeah. He's this huge. Well, he on the front of it looks like he's this huge lich that has these two horns. Yes, he's a. I think everybody on it. No, I can't. I don't think I can make it that broad of a statement saying everybody on one of the books is somebody famous, because I think they just have a basic beholder on the Monster's Guide. But they on a lot of them, it seems like it is turned up that is somebody actually from the lore in most cases.
I literally thought he was just a cool picture.
I mean, he is a really cool picture. He's also the same person on the front of the Tomb of Annihilation campaign book.
Is the Tomb of Annihilation made by him?
Yeah. It's called the Temple of the Nine Gods.
Oh, I thought it was called. That shows you how much I know. I thought it was literally called the Tomb of Annihilation, but all right.
No, yeah. So I'll just jump into it. Acererak is an amazingly old lich, and he has a lot of different iterations in D&D. He has changed based on like the current writers of D&D and their kind of ideas about who Acererak is as a person. He is originally from a different setting than the Forgotten Realms. He is from the setting of Greyhawk, which is one of Gary Gygax's own settings. So he was created by Gary. He was brought into 5th edition and the Forgotten Realms as the catalyst of the adventure Tomb of Annihilation. And he is the catalyst for it because he created the Tomb of Annihilation, which they go through, which, as we talked about previously, was the Temple of the Nine Gods. He is one of the most powerful liches in all of D&D, and it's debatable whether you could say he's more powerful than Vecna or not.
Is Vecna a real thing in D&D, or is that just like...
Yeah, Vecna's a real thing.
Okay.
Vecna is a powerful lich that then tried to achieve godhood.
I didn't even know he was a real, like, D&D lore person.
Oh, he is, yeah. And he actually is involved in Acererak's story. So, who is Acererak? Acererak in Greyhawk is the child of a powerful Baelor named Tarnhem, who had relations with a human when he was summoned by an inexperienced wizard into the material plane.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a rough story. So he kills the guy who summons him, and then like his like servant or maid, he kind of yeah.
Or we're talking about a Baelor.
Yeah, the horrible like, demon Baelor.
Big wings, demon thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. People of all sides seek Acererak for his power. A notable one that I liked is a Githyanki necromancer named Kostya Uzurith Moiva, who seeks to return him to existence for reasons we'll discuss later, as an ally against the horrible Lich Queen, who we've already talked about, rules the Githyanki. Now, his mother is killed by a torch-wielding mob when he is at a young age, and Acererak is rescued by the one, the only, Vecna the Whispered One.
So, is this Lich, is he like half demon too?
Yeah. So he'd be considered a Cambion. It's a type of demon.
Oh, okay. I know what those are.
Yeah. So some of Vecna's advisors suggested that he kill the child. So Vecna killed them, and he took Acererak as his apprentice. Acererak is 10 at the time, and he loathes living, wishing to become undead like his master. Vecna attacks a location and is severely wounded, but is saved by Acererak, further ingratiating himself to Vecna. Eventually, Acererak goes to a location called the Vast Swamp, and there he builds a location called the Tomb of Horrors. And he lures adventurers there for them to die and use their souls in his research. Eventually, he fully entombs himself in a tomb and devotes himself wholly to his studies. And he turns himself into a demi-lich, having no need for a physical body anymore.
Are demi-liches like the floating skull things?
Yeah. Many attempt to take on his resting place, but none have been successful despite their claims that they had. By the time that a second module returns adventurers to the Tomb of Horrors, it's literally called Return of the Tomb of Horrors, a group of necromancers has settled the area outside the tomb, and this place has become known as Skull City. In this adventure, the tomb is revealed to simply be an antechamber for something much, much bigger. Acererak's true resting place is underneath the lost city of Moyle, on the border of the negative energy plane, where Acererak has been studying its energies to gain unprecedented control of undead throughout the multiverse. Now, this is where stuff gets really crazy. Acererak traps one of his arch nemesis in the negative energy plane in a tower that he makes. The enemy is a powerful paladin of Palor named Saint Pentaval. Acererak wants to physically torture him for a long time, so he does, and he does this for hundreds and hundreds of years. Eventually growing bored, he creates a simulacrum to continue the process as he leaves.
What the crap? That's
Yep.
so bad.
Yep. Eventually, Acererak is killed by adventurers fighting through his tomb, defeating him, and he becomes what is called a vestige, an ineffable, amoral entity which can be summoned and bound by people known as binders, granting them abilities based off the vestiges of own abilities. Eventually, the simulacrum learns of the death of the real Acererak, and seeks to attempt to leave the tower in the negative energy plane where the real Acererak has bound him. He tries many times and fails, but he keeps searching, he keeps trying to find a way, and he finds a machine in the tower called the Soul Machine, and it kind of grinds up souls and it makes them easier to use for different tasks.
Nice soul smoothie.
Yeah. So he researches and researches and researches for hundreds and hundreds of years, and is eventually able to, through the Soul Machine, make a new soul by grinding up other souls. So he is able to find a way to create a new soul. And he gives it to himself, making himself now a real person, no longer a simulacrum. And he takes on the mantle of Acererak. Isn't that crazy?
Okay, so he makes a dungeon. He lures adventurers into this dungeon, kills them, grinds their soul up in a soul machine, and then makes himself a new soul.
So the real Acererak dies. He died by people fighting through and then killing his phylactery and full-on killing him. This is the simulacrum that's been left behind to torture Saint Pentaval. So this person is a simulacrum, and they realize, oh gosh, the real Acererak is dead. I want to get out of here and kind of continue his legacy. So he finds a way to turn himself from a simulacrum into a full-on person.
That's so messed up.
He is smart enough and magical enough to be able to do that, which is crazy. And the simulacrum is actually the thing we see on the front of the DMG and on the Tomb of Annihilation book. Because the person who did everything in Tomb of Annihilation is the simulacrum. It's not the actual. Because the only way that we would see the actual Acererak now is as you said earlier when I said Demi-Lich, a floating skull. So the person with the real body, the full-on body of Acererak, is his simulacrum.
But that one is more powerful now because
the other one's dead.
Died.
Yeah.
So the simulacrum is an actual lich now.
Yes.
That's a cool, clever story.
It is. It's really cool. So he stayed in the tower in the negative energy plane for a while, using it like the real Acererak, tempting adventurers to save Saint Pentaval, only to destroy them and gain the power of their souls and continue his research. He did this for many years. Now, the next part is going to be big spoilers for Tomb of Annihilation. So any of you playing it, I would suggest skipping a few minutes in the recording. So while he is in this negative energy plane, he finds what's called an atropal. Atriples are dead, stillborn gods. They're still like infants, and they have the like what you think of a not infant. What's the whatever a baby looks like when it's still inside you? What do they call those?
A fetus.
A fetus. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. A fetus, and so it still has an umbilical cord and the whole 9 yards. Like, but it's this huge, giant thing.
God fetuses.
Yes.
Nice.
And so he uses his research to create a powerful artifact called the Soulmonger, which stopped anyone from casting any level of resurrection spell. Well, it stopped it from working. You could still try and cast it. It wouldn't work. And that anyone who had been resurrected starts to decay and would eventually fully perish. He uses all of that energy to feed the Atripol and kind of try to reawaken it from its like hibernation.
This guy's so messed up.
Yeah. Acererak forces the inhabitants of Chult, called the Omuans, to build the Tomb of the 9 Gods, where he hid the Soulmonger and the Atripol, using its dangerous traps like the Tomb of Horrors to kill more people, speeding up the energy the Soulmonger is collecting. When the collection was done, he murdered all the rest of the Omuans and used their energy to feed the Atripol as well. And so that is where Tomb of Annihilation starts. The Soulmonger is created and is activated. And so all of a sudden these people are starting to decay that have been resurrected. And so it's this really crazy thing that you have to then find out where all this is and what's going on.
Is the simulacrum in Tomb of Annihilation?
Yeah. He's not... Some people have called him the antagonist, but I watched an interview of Chris Perkins, who's one of the creators of the kind of like current head writers and stuff. And he specifically said he is not the antagonist. He is more of a catalyst. The antagonist in both Tomb of Horrors and Tomb of Annihilation is the Tomb. The Tomb is the antagonist. And they wanted to keep that the same from the old edition to now. Acererak is not really the end goal. The end goal is finishing the Tomb.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. And that's all I have for Acererak.
And so today, what do you want to do exactly?
Well, I think we have 2 options. We can either create a dungeon or we can create a lich. Which would you prefer?
I don't know. I like both of those. It might be fun to try and make a dungeon.
I would say I don't know of any other like well-known dungeons in D&D, but I'm sure there are others. So we might go
like
lich today.
Mad Mage or whatever. Isn't that like a crazy one?
But I know literally nothing about it as of right now.
Yeah, me too. I'd have to do research so I can, send it to you.
Yeah, because you're the one who does all the research for these. That's right.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so I say we should make a lich today.
Make a lich?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't really know how liches are formed except for that you have to put your soul in a phylactery or whatever.
Well,
is that
in D&D, to create a lich, I'm not sure 100% the exact things required, but I know there's like a ritual that you have to like sacrifice a lot of people to become a lich. Yeah, so they definitely have to get like a phylactery. And there's some sort of ritual.
Yeah, it looks like they have to get a phylactery. They have to make some sort of potion.
Yeah. Like a Draco Lich. I remember that they had to get this crazy potion to kind of, and there's like a huge possibility of them just full on dying. But yeah, they had to do this crazy potion.
Yeah, the Lich's potion is meant to actually kill you.
Yeah, that's what the Draco Lich did. It literally like kills you, but it kills you in such a magical way that there's a chance of you coming back.
And then the final thing is the ritual. And the ritual requires fresh hearts. Just fresh hearts, It's
No,
you just make those into a special dust, which is sprinkled over your body. Don't worry about that.
You don't just get like a heart smoothie?
I've always thought about having a fresh heart smoothie, but it just
good
seems
for cholesterol.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Now, in my game, I did change this because I wanted to have like good liches. And they're like in D&D, the idea of lich is always evil, always terrible, because as this ritual says, like you have to have constantly have hearts and like all these things to keep living. So I had a ritual and I had a phylactery, and the ritual just requires a vast amount of magic. And so this group that did it, they were, it was like a last ditch effort type thing. And so they would slowly regain their magical energy. Then everybody in this group would use it to turn one person into a lich. And then if they survive long enough, then they all gain their magic again, and they do it to the next person, the next person, and the next person, until this whole group became liches. Some did die, but the ones that were successful are still around. And so some of them are good, some of them are bad.
I haven't even made a lich in my world, so I haven't even looked at very much of how a lich is made. But now that we know, guess we got to make a messed up individual. Who...
I have a weird idea.
Shoot, do it.
What if? I mean, I still don't know why this would be. What if it was forced on someone?
Forced lichdom?
Like, yes. And so this person originally didn't want to become a lich, and like thinking of it like as like some sort of like an end boss at the end of a dungeon. They have lived so long now, and maybe instead of dying if they don't get the hearts, maybe they just starve. And so, but they starve endlessly, and so maybe they've kind of gone mad in their loneliness and starvation at the end of this dungeon.
That is super messed up.
It's partially based on a game that I've heard about. There's an amazing YouTube channel for like kind of diving into the narrative of games. It's called Jacob Geller. Jacob Geller is the host of it, and he kind of talks about stuff. And so he just released one about 4 short games about pain. And they're all like these 4 horror games. And one of them just really hit me. And I was like, ooh, that's dark and crazy. This person, this woman, she was so lonely, and like she like tried to create a family for herself, and each one had their own thing that made them like not right, not perfect. The only one who was like close to perfect was the son, and the young son, but he was fragile. And so stuff happens, and some of them start to decay, and some of them start to die. And so she just kind of goes mad of this loneliness, and even these creatures she creates can't fill that void. And it was just so creepy and so cool that I was like, I gotta use this.
I love the idea of somebody being forced into lichdom, but how would that even work?
It might even be like a curse. Someone's like cursing them for something they did in life. Maybe it was a queen who, this person who she didn't know was a witch. Like she had their husband killed, or their wife killed, or maybe it was their child or somebody they cared about. Just like somebody, like maybe it was hags in general, just this covet that she angered in some way.
My initial thought was a little bit different. My initial thought was like, say a queen or a king turns their servant into a lich because they want to be able to control a lich. So they trick their like servant, or like a maid or something like this.
I kind of want it to be not a trick. I want it to be like they let them know, and this person is so dedicated to the family. Maybe they've served the family for a long, long time. Maybe they're an elf and they've served them for like 250 years, and they're like, if this is what must be done, I'll do it. But comes to regret it in the end.
Here's how I see it. I wouldn't see it as like a lie type of trick, but more of like a stretching of the truth. So like what this will do will bring you immense power, bring back the family name, like restore, order to our nation type thing, but not necessarily like, hey, we're going to kill you and turn you into a lich.
I kind of like that thing they mentioned about restore the family name. So maybe they used to be nobles and they used to have this. They used to be like a great power in the city, but they are just now maids to the nobility. And so this is like, they see it as their chance to bring their name, their family name back to prominence.
Now, here's another interesting idea that goes along this like ruined family name where they summon this lich. They create this lich for their own gain. I like the idea of a, I don't want to say, I guess, a criminal like city where, say, these people rebelled and removed their rulers. And so now the old nobles have started capturing and taking the vagabonds from the streets and slowly turning them to make this lich. So taking their hearts, obviously. And that way the world, or neighboring cities, neighboring nations, don't really, they see this more as like oh, well, I mean, this city, people are disappearing and dying, but it's probably for the best because these people are low lives. Like they are no good, or they're nothings. And so this like noble family slowly takes over the city by capturing criminals and vagabonds and homeless and just the nothings of the D&D universe, takes their hearts.
Who is the forced lich in this idea?
Yeah. So you have like a noble family who's
it sounds a lot like vampires, like they take them and they take their blood or whatever.
Yeah. I was thinking more along the lines of, say, like this city, the city lord, there was like a rebellion in the city, and they essentially kicked out and cast out this noble lord and his family.
Mm-hmm.
And the noble lord ended up fleeing to escape these, whether we want it to be bandits or criminals or whatever, but they ended up fleeing the city, and they decided, hey, the best way for us to regain our family line and family lineage and regain the power that we once had is to create a lich. So they start stealing criminals and vagabonds and homeless people off the street. People that, maybe the current leadership of the city wouldn't notice, or, even like neighboring nations wouldn't quite notice or
But
care
still,
about.
like, who is becoming the lich? That's what I'm confused about.
Oh, just a servant. It's the same.
Okay,
like,
so it's still just
the Lord is turning a servant into a lich.
Yeah.
Because
try to gain the power of that and overcome.
Yep. And then if he controls the lich, he can control this whole mass army of undead and, but not have to kill himself in the process.
Mm-hmm. Does it go wrong for him? Do you think that eventually, it might not be immediate, but after a certain amount of years, do you think that the
thing that I would see going wrong is that a lich probably, can't really be controlled very well.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I was meaning. So does the person, once they realize, oh, wait, why am I following this person's commands? I have way more power than them, and I have this army behind me. Does that go wrong?
Oh, I mean, I'm assuming. Well, here's the thing, though, is if the Lord has the phylactery,
touche,
he pretty much has control over the lich, correct? Because he could, like,
well, he doesn't have control, but he could threaten to kill them.
And so I mean, now the question would be, I mean, couldn't the lich just like instantly kill this poor noble lord?
It depends on how smart do you think this nobility is? If the nobility is smart enough to come up to have like either they're a powerful mage or they know of one, and they have set up all these kind of wards to protect themselves from this lich, then I think they could survive. But if it's like somebody just playing with fire when they don't have any flame retardant thing or any sort of anti-fire fire extinguisher, then hey, no, don't even. We're just gonna jump over that. We're just gonna ignore that. I couldn't remember the word fire extinguisher. Anti-fire thing.
Yeah, those anti-fire things.
Once you shoot with a little foam.
Oh man.
But yes.
See, I think let's approach this from a DM running a campaign. Would you, and this is a question, I don't know the answer to this. This is a question. Would you rather have it be the Lord controls this lich, or would you rather have it be the lich controls the Lord, or the Lord is dead and the lich now just rules over?
I kind of like the idea of it being like ancient lore. Like this lich has now lived on for a long time. Like at the beginning, that's how it was. But this lore died maybe even 1,000 years ago. And so this lich has kind of been like, maybe like the next person who took over was kind and nice. And so let them have their freedom. But this lich is like, what do I do?
I even like,
And so maybe they start a dungeon and become terrible and try to rule a place, or maybe they're really good or whatever.
Okay, so the Lord succeeds in what he does. He forces this servant, which, now we're kind of in this whole story and not really focused on the single servant, but that's beside the point. He turns this servant into a lich, and it's successful, and he's able to control the lich because he has the phylactery. So trinket, whatever. He has that phylactery and uses it as a tool to control this lich. I would assume that the lich does not like to be controlled, even if the lich was a servant of the Lord, like an unquestioning, loyal servant to the Lord. I think once you undergo the lich process, you probably, your mind probably kind of
doesn't really like that no more.
Yeah, it gets a little bit corrupted. But he doesn't have a choice and has to serve the Lord. And so the Lord commands this lich to ransack the city. And so the lich destroys the entire city in order to essentially create this empty, hollow city for the Lord to reclaim his name and his land.
Huh.
And I like the idea of that being like ancient, a long time ago. And so now the Lord and his family have all passed on, and the lich is the only thing that remains.
Yeah. I like to think like it's an ancient civilization that is now maybe even is buried underneath the ground, but this lich still remains. And maybe they even remain if it's like an underground city now that it's been kind of the sands of time have come over it. Maybe even the lich lives down there in that what is remained of this now cavernous city because it's now in a cave.
Or this is another idea. The Lord succeeds, restores his name, and the city becomes another flourishing metropolis. And now, hundreds of years later, the lich has awoken from his slumber and is now slowly plaguing the city, drawing people into his lair that he's now created, hence dungeon, has now created to like bring in more souls for him to feed upon.
And
it would be really fun, and this, again, could just be me, but it'd be really fun as a player to like learn about this whole lore. Obviously you'd have to be high level and kind of connect the dots between there's this weird, plague or this,
Well, I always like when it's something like this, having like, maybe it's a phrase, maybe it's just like a thing like, I don't know. I had one in my head, but it just went away. It was like something like just something the kids say, "Get home before the Lich King gets
like
you," or something like that. Where it's just like the Lich King is so a part of their history that, like, even though now it just seems like a fable, there are phrases in their common tongue that just reference it, and it's one of those things that they just don't think about anymore. And so when these things start happening, nobody realizes it until partway through. Like, wait a minute. We've used this phrase a few times throughout the campaign. Could this be that Lich King?
Well, yeah, I mean, so yeah, like a nursery rhyme type of thing. I like
something
that
like
idea.
That. So, yeah.
I also like the idea of, they make it to this city and like either staying in a tavern or whatever. They can even hear, like say the tavern keeper tell this like old story of, betrayal, rebellion, Lord like raising this horrible creature to essentially destroy the city, to start back and reclaim his name.
Yeah.
And they think it's, legend says that this creature will one day return to plague the city again.
Yeah, one thing I do want to add to this story real quick. You can continue after. I just want to say this story with the tavern keeper, the story that he's telling. I had an idea that maybe when the war or whatever, the destruction was over, there was still this like evil hunger for, like, as we were saying, souls or more hearts from the Lich, and so that they like had to magically put it in hibernation. And so this awakening, like, they like maybe the king, the current king, knows that they have this Lich under the thing, but they don't know that he's free.
Ooh, yeah.
And so they purposely tried to hide it because, like, oh no, he went crazy after whatever we did. And so that's part of the tale, is this gone mad Lich.
Yeah, I like half of this where I think it would be really fun to say once the Lord succeeded in destroying the city and rebuilding, he ended up putting the Lich to sleep so that he couldn't kill it. There's no way that this Lord could kill.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, that's kind of what I was meaning.
But he doesn't need it anymore, and he doesn't want it anymore because it's pure evil and pure destruction. And now he's built this thriving city, so he has now put this Lich to sleep long ago, and now that he's dead, it's slowly waking up again, becoming unsealed. I don't know the right word to say, but slowly awakening.
Yeah.
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, and maybe at first it's still like in its slumber area, and it's just doing these things almost reflexively with whatever magic it has. It's kind of luring these people into where it is until they fall into traps or whatnot, and they're just being lured here. And then when it wakes up, it kind of wakes up because it's had a certain amount of souls. And maybe even if you want to engage the party in it early before the Lich gains like a lot of power, and you don't want to make it like the big bad, but you want to make it a mid arc, maybe you make one of them feel this calling.
Yeah, I mean, what I would also, I like the idea of this being like an early arc, like where they're not fighting the Lich, like, but they are.
Because Liches are CR21, so.
Yeah, you got to be really high level. So, like, I mean, I think you could make this any kind of arc you wanted. I like the idea of like first major city type arc where like, maybe one of the party members is, going to go and steal something, like wakes up at 2 a.m. and they see, like 3 people just slowly making their way out the city gates towards the mountains, just totally comatose, just walking away towards the mountains, just to add to like the strange vibes. Or even like guards are like, they wake up the next day or something, and guards are like, we tried to stop them, but they just wouldn't listen, and they just kept walking. And that would also kind of, the party could then could be like a little pinprick for them to like stay up at night to see if other people are doing this, and they watch slowly as people slowly exit the city every night. I think that'd be a really fun little thing to add.
Yeah.
And then when the party gets to that dungeon, they can be fighting the spirit of a Lich, or like a fragmented soul, any, like, you could add all sorts of cool stuff. Or you could even make it like some sort of strange, say along the line, the Lord who created this Lich, his family lost the lineage to the throne, and another group came, and now you have the original heir is now trying to reawaken the Lich to regain control of his city, and then they have to fight.
That's cool.
The heir of the Lord.
I like that.
Yeah, which I think would be really fun.
Yeah, so you're not fighting the Lich. The Lich is still asleep, but you're fighting the heir. That's cool.
The original lineage, the heir of the throne. They lost it, long ago to some other family. And so then you could even talk to the nobles of the city, and they don't know anything about it. But the original heir, who's now like hiding away in this like mountain, trying to reawaken the phylactery to summon the Lich again, so that he can regain his own power and control.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
And then it would also be fun if you did that too. The party could possibly be walking around with a phylactery in their pocket.
I was thinking they might find the body of the Lich. I probably wouldn't give them the phylactery. Just giving them like, oh, here is like
why not
a sarcophagus with which you can carry if you want, but
why not give them a phylactery?
I mean, I wasn't saying you don't. I was just saying.
Oh no! I mean,
all I was thinking of is giving them the sarcophagus, because that's interesting. Because if later on you do want to have it awaken, they will know exactly where it came from, and they're like, "Oh no, I guess we didn't put big enough guards on it, or something, or they didn't hide it well enough. If they tried to hide it, or however they tried to get rid of it or deal with it, they just didn't."
How you could also play this running along this like little phylactery line is you could not even hint at it being a Lich while they're doing this side quest, and they just find a locket in the dungeon that the heir had. That he was just trying to resummon some sort of ancient evil spirit that destroyed the town. But there's a cool magical locket that you found. And so the party goes, a big portion of the campaign with a phylactery in their pocket without even knowing.
That is interesting. And then maybe it awakens.
Yep.
And they still don't know. They still are. They go to fight it and whatnot, and they're like, and then maybe it comes out in like the final battle or something where it's like, that's the phylactery.
I mean, you could even do like, if you wanted like early, like, mid arc as they like sleep, because they can't quite teleport yet, like they're just before that stage, like they get attacked by like some weird group of cultists or something, and they steal that locket from them,
Yeah, and that would create a intrigue. Like, what is it? Why did they want it? How did they know we had it? Type things.
Right.
And yeah.
Or like a brother and sister were the heir, and you killed the brother, and now the sister wants revenge, and she forms this cult and is now chasing you around.
That would work too.
I mean, there's so much potential. Or you could just, say forget all that and have them fight a lich at level 20,
I would probably throw that if you're going to use the stat block of Lich, I would throw it in earlier than 20. 15 probably less than that, probably 13. I mean, it depends on how many players you have. But if you have like 5, I would do 13 or 15.
Yeah, and like magic items. Like if you're running real low magic items, 15 probably they could probably still do it.
Yeah, it's true. Low magic.
If you're running high magic,
13, I like giving them cool even magic items that let them roll more dice or kind of make them feel like they feel physically as they're carrying more dice that they are getting more powerful.
Yeah, most certainly. And so I think that would be I like it as a really early story arc. I think that would be really fun, where you have to go in and kill the heir, the original heir, and like you learn all this history throughout the entire city, and different stories and rumors, and even like ancient manuscripts of accounts of this like lord who transformed his servant into some sort of horrible evil that destroyed the city so he could start back from square one. And you end up following this lord, the heir to the throne, into this like dungeon to fight him and prevent him from resummoning whatever entity this is, which you don't know is a lich.
Yeah, that's cool. Now let's dive into like who this lich was.
Yeah, do we want to do?
Because I mean, we have a lot of other time for the episode, so we should dive into something about the story more.
Do we want this to be sad story? Like, how do we? I mean, it'd probably be pretty sad to be sacrificed to turn into a lich, right?
I mean, it depends on how they feel about it. Are they super loyal? Are they not? What is their connection to the family? How old are they? Are they going to die anyways? And they're just like, hey, why not?
Yeah, maybe they have some sort of like sick.
Yes, they have a sickness. Yes. Oh, okay. My idea now is it's not like a servant of theirs. It's a servant of theirs, like brother or kid, some sort of the relative of one of their servants that's going to die, does not have like maybe even money is not the option, is not the. It's not that they don't have enough money, it's that there is no cure to this thing. And so technically lichdom, they will survive this thing, whatever the disease or issue that they have is.
Yeah.
And so they offer it as like, we can save them, but they will work for us.
Yeah. You could also do a route, and this is a little bit more messed up. You could also do a route where, say the Lord has slaves, and slaves, the two slaves have a baby, and the Lord threatens either the parents or the kid when it grows up that if you don't undergo this ritual process, I'm going to kill your parents or kill your child. And that, or maybe
they try to, they know they want to do this from the very beginning. So from a very early age, they kind of, this is also horrifying, like beat submission into them, beat this that we're above you kind of into them, into their psyche and into who they are.
Yeah.
But they're very submissive to this family, this line.
Yeah. Or like a combination of the two, where it's like they essentially, like the ruler essentially beats these slaves into submission, knowing full well that their son or their daughter is going to turn into this lich. And if you do anything to stop it, we're going to kill your son. So like all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so messed up.
Yeah, it is real bad.
But at the same time, I'd feel like, a good person probably wouldn't try to regain their city by summoning a lich.
Oh, no good person would do that. No, nobody would do that. It does have to be a horrible human being who believes, I'm going to let Rome burn to,
yeah.
It has to be like a Nero level villain where they're like, no, Rome will burn so that I can build a better house or a better Colosseum or better whatever I want.
Yeah, I feel like we've long passed the I'm a good person and we've jumped off the cliff of insanity, you know? Like I feel like we're not when we started saying, hey, we're gonna force somebody to be a lich, I think we kinda
I mean, yeah, I think the moment that was the suggestion we were going with, we knew the people forcing them was not a good people.
No, totally. And so then I see this kid kind of growing up as they look up to this lord, while the parents despise and hate this lord because but they can't do anything about it. So they're watching as their kid grows up with this like reverence and respect and like an undying loyalty to this lord, no pun intended. And I should have been a pun intended, but it's not. But anyways, so they watch in horror as their kid slowly grows up and knowing full well what's going to happen to him as he ages. Mm-hmm. And so this kid grows up a pampered noble whose family line lost power. So he grew up, riding horses, learning swordplay, all sorts of, basic noble, best education, this whole thing, but totally indoctrinated to follow this noble to his death.
Yeah.
And the parents are alive the entire process.
Maybe the society that this city is in, which we should try to think about next, maybe it's like an Egyptian society where when the king dies, all of the servants die with them so that they could go to heaven with their servants. Their servants are going to serve them in heaven. And so that kind of idea is a part of it so that these parents knew that they're going to die when this guy dies as well. So everybody in this society, and every servant in this society has this submission beat into them, kind of.
So I have a few problems with that. And my main problem would be if the city lords had lost their power from this city and from this culture, they wouldn't the culture themselves wouldn't revere them very much, so they probably wouldn't have that too much. And my other problem would be I like the idea of the parents absolutely despising this man.
Oh no, I still think they 100% despise him.
Yeah, but just under the threat of I'm going to kill your child if you won't be able to watch him grow up. Type thing.
That works.
That is what prevents them from doing anything, as they just helplessly watch out the sidelines, like on the sidelines, as their son just slowly grows up and then becomes a lich.
Yep.
Under the control of the noble.
And not a great ending for the child, anyways.
No, absolutely not. But at the same time, it's like the parents get to spend time with their kid. They get to partially raise their kid. Like if they didn't accept this, they wouldn't get to see their kids. So it's like this like horrible dilemma,
Yeah.
So it's just truly messed up if you play it that way.
Yeah.
And the city, I would see the city. I don't know. How would you see? I mean, the culture of the city probably just like I don't know, like a normal European city. I mean, I don't really see it. They kicked out their ruler to find a new, in search of something
when
better.
I mentioned Nero and Rome burning, I felt that as like Rome, that kind of Roman architecture and the Roman style government, and just that just feels right to me. Because like even that with Nero letting like setting the fire, which is still not 100% proven, but very much believed that Nero burned Rome for his own wants and desires. That same kind of level of I don't know if it's insanity, but just of malice is definitely what is required by these people turning their servant into a lich.
Yeah, totally. And I see, like, I like the idea of like he gets kicked out and for the love of my city, I'm going
yes,
to
he still like believes and says that he is doing it for the city. That's great.
Yeah, like for the love and the good of my city, I'm going to destroy everyone in it so that we can start afresh.
Untainted, and like every one of those terrible lines that if someone says it, they're immediately bad.
Yeah, like so messed up, but it's so good. And then you can just, like depending on where the party goes in this city, they find all sorts of cool cultural aspects of this city that point to a previous king who was, a tyrant who rules an iron fist, and he was eventually kicked out and removed from this city, and has no longer even a like a part of any noble society.
Mm-hmm.
I also see this city. I see now how I would also love if I'm approaching this as a DM. I want my players to fall in love with this city so that when they know that it's somebody's trying to destroy it, they all the more try and like stop it, because you can also run into the problem of the party kind of like, it's not interesting to me, like doesn't interest my party.
How would you go about getting them to love a city?
Well, I mean, NPCs are always a good way of doing it. So like shopkeepers and all sorts of stuff like that. Like the tavern, the innkeeper, that would be a really good one. The guy who tells them these kind of stories and stuff like that. And you might another way to do it, and probably like
a way that you might change the innkeeper scene that we talked about previously to make it a little more endearing is have him like middle of the day, there's like customers and stuff, but he's still like sitting to the side talking to all these children, or maybe like they're all huddled around the bar to hear his tale.
Oh yeah, like that. I like that a lot. Kind of like a Jesus with the kids type thing, like
I was actually thinking I don't know if you read the book Name of the Wind. There's a bard in it that in the first one, in one of the first cities that they go to, and the bard just is like, he always draws such a crowd every time, and the main character is always like, gets up in front, always wants to hear the tales of this person.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I and then you could even have him just take extra care and caution with the party, like just always attentive to them. It's it's really easy when you're like really nice to the party and like like, and not in a weird creepy way though, because then that your party can get really suspicious of it. But
especially if you've betrayed them before with other NPCs, they're like, wait a minute, I don't know if I can trust this one.
Yeah, and what I was also going to say before that was you could even do like, this isn't the first arc in the city, so like a little bit of other, you rescue somebody's daughter, like like just other little stuff that's kind of spread around the city that they've done a little bit beforehand. And then the NPCs that the party has come to like love and cherish, some of them start, one of them disappears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah
and it's an immediate plot hook, because all of a sudden this shopkeeper that you've been seeing, the tavern, like the tavern guy, the guy at the inn, the innkeeper is gone.
Yeah,
the wife and kids are like, he's been missing for a couple days now since you've left to fight the goblins or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, that's a good way of doing it, getting him connected to a character, then that character disappearing.
And then it would fit perfectly in with, well, his heart's going to get harvested for the Lich, or his soul essence being used to reawaken it, or whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah,
that's probably how I would do it. You could also just like have them be contacted by the current leader of the city, or and he's like, help, my daughter is gone, she walked out of the city a couple days ago, like you can do that too if you want.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always a little hard to unless you're like a higher level campaign, it's hard to make it be like, why is he contacting this group of level 2 to 3 characters?
Right. So yeah, I would have like the first 3 levels, say like 1 to 4. Like you start the very first section level 1, automatic level up to level 2, and then do like a couple more levels, so they're like level 5, like the sweet spot. And then just like all of a sudden the tavern keeper that they've spent several sessions with is gone.
Yeah. Maybe you've even been doing like tasks for somebody who's high up in the government. And so he like has a straight line with the king. And so when he hears that you're kind of searching for this tavern keeper, he's like, wait, the princess disappeared too.
My family's gone missing.
Yeah, the princess disappeared too. Maybe these are connected. And like then that's how you get your connection with the king. Because it's always fun to have like at least one connection with somebody of great power in this whole campaign, and be able to be like, in like later sessions, like when things start getting like catastrophe giant level, they're able to be like, oh hey, we got to contact this super well-known king and be like, we need your help, or we're here to warn you about something.
Like 15 levels later, 10 levels later, you're like, oh no, the Lich is actually waking up now from the trinket that was stolen from us.
That is a great way of doing it. Yeah, and like he's coming straight for the town.
2 story arcs using one character.
Yeah, one villain. It technically leads into 2.
Yep. And now the party has to stop them both. One was the first story arc. The other one's the last story arc.
Yeah, that's a good one. So now we should probably like try to figure out who this noble heir is. Are they like a cousin?
Well, he's probably
son or a great grandson. Like, how far away from the original king that did this is this heir?
Oh man,
what was that?
I just said he's probably 4 or 4 not found because he's an heir. Anyway.
Oh my word, that was a real bad one. That took me a little too long to get.
Oh man, that was a stretch. But when stretches feel really good, that's what that was.
Ugh.
But yes, we should.
Even your bird was like, "Ugh!" There was the sound of disgust in that chirp.
Yeah, she also groaned.
But yeah, so who is this heir? How many generations do you think it is away from the actual event? Do you think it's like 3, or is it like 10?
I mean, it's probably it's probably a few, right?
Yeah, I was like to be far away, but it would still be interesting if it was like his son or his grandson. But
the thing
losing control of which actually, I've been like playing a lot of Crusader Kings 3, and like just the ease with which that can happen in a game. Like you play as this amazing king, then the son takes over, or the daughter takes over, and they start ruling, and everybody just turns away. And so losing control as the next in line is actually way easier than I thought it would be. And it's totally really cool to kind of see that how it's just like from everything from just being an inexperienced ruler to all these different things can affect like just how like easy it is for it to slip away. And so there would be a lot of rage in this heir if they were like, their parent went through all this effort and they screwed it up and lost it on their turn.
Yeah, the more I think about it, it'd probably have to be somewhat close to feel the rage. Because if you were 20 generations removed, then it's kind of like, all right, well, I mean.
Well, so I was thinking whoever it was like they had lost it.
See, now how my initial gut would be like 3 generations. So you have the king.
Do you now have like a cybernetic gut, like Cyberpunk? This is your original gut that we're talking about?
All right, sir. Calm down. But how I was seeing it is you have the king, the original guy who it doesn't have to be a king. I don't even like it being a king, but we'll just say king. But you have the king, the original dude who made the Lich. He ruled the city for a long time after the Lich destroyed it, brought it back to prosperity. Okay, he died. He died from a horrible dark power of some kind that ended up killing him from some sort of corruption. Just a hint at lichdom.
Mm-hmm.
Hint of the adverse effects of him turning somebody into a lich and messing with dark powers.
Yeah. Which this was before the actual recording, but we've just talked about Forgive Durden's album, Razia's Shadow, and in that one, one of the characters that is from the Dark, which it's a musical album. It's amazing. You should listen to it. But the character from the Dark, their proximity to this princess makes her sick with this sickness that he immediately knows is from his darkness inside of it. And so that would be really interesting, is like this proximity to a lich for that long actually has a negative effect on the person. And maybe this heir doesn't know. And maybe if you want the heir to become like a big bad, and so something, or maybe even just to make their encounter more interesting and not just you're fighting a dude with a sword, maybe something about that, them being like near this lich for so long has also altered them in some way.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, so king dies. So the king makes the lich. The lich kills the city. The king rebuilds the city, turns it into another glorious metropolis. Okay, his life was extended for a periodic time, but he died mysteriously of some sort of illness. And the hints are he lived longer because he summoned this lich, and the dark powers kind of messed with his life.
Mm-hmm.
But he mysteriously passed away from some sort of illness. So those are the two hints that you get from him making some sort of horrible dark pact. Those are the kind of things that the players can learn through history.
Readily apparent, or are those going to be like things that you have to make history checks?
Yeah, it would probably not even history checks. It'd probably be a really hard DC for just plain history checks. But like, if they wanted to go to a library or like
codexes archives, you can read.
Yeah.
Something
then
you can find in the dungeon or something.
Right. Anything like that. Yeah. He has a son. The son rules for a small amount of time, but is rejected by the populace. Okay. During this time, the son has a son. And the son's son, son Bolano, the son's son, he watches his father get removed and ousted by the city, which gives him this hatred for the city.
Yeah, ousted by the moon.
Right, exactly. You're right. Yeah, you read my mind. And so then the son dies.
We are really bad at jokes, guys.
No, we're fantastic at jokes. Listen, we're the best jokes. We have best jokes here, such as chairs and potato wedges.
Best jokes.
Yeah. Hashtag best jokes. Please don't do that. But anyways, so the son watches his father get kicked out of the city from being rulership, and he is instilled with this hatred for the city, essentially. And he thinks that it needs to be purged and restarted just like his grandpa, just like his grandfather did. And he has read that his grandfather did this by some sort of dark pact. The son of the son, he, after his father dies, he makes his way.
It's called a grandson.
Listen, no,
I thought you would get it after like multiple times of saying son, but you just keep going son.
It's going to always be the son's son. But anyways, the son's son, he ends up going into this lich's dungeon where the phylactery is.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying, he ends up doing some sort of dark pact to try and unlock this thing, but he receives some sort of mysterious dark powers. So when the party fights him, he's not just a dude with a sword. He can lash people with some sort of darkness energy and throw them against a wall. He can burn their feet with necrotic energy, whatever. It's some fun abilities.
Hellish rebukes.
Yeah, because he's been corrupted by finding this area.
Mm-hmm.
Bam. Fun little story arc that then leads into big bad evil guy Lich comes back to life because you lost the locket that you found at level 3.
Yeah. I think that's a well-rounded encounter, and we talked about it in weird points. We didn't just go through one and then go through another and go through. It was they're mixed up in the episode, but I think after all of it, that's a pretty good encounter. It's a pretty good 2 arcs that you already have planned for the campaign.
Yeah, and all you had to do was make the king, the son, and the son's son.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, maybe the moon too, if you really wanted.
Well, That's episode 11. Sorry, 12. I keep doing this, but I say the wrong episode number. That is episode 12 of Dungeoneer.
Hey, you know what's cool too? It's the 12th today of the 12th month.
Okay, everybody, just so you know, I guess Aaron just said we record on Saturdays. So yes, we do record on Saturdays.
Yep, we do. It's true.
And just because we got to add one of these references in every episode until it becomes a part of our brand, chairs and potato wedges, everybody. Chairs and potato wedges.
Chairs and potato wedges.
We said it too soon before we had a following, and so we didn't. We got to make it a part of the brand. Got to.
It's going to be in every episode.
It's got to be in every episode.
I mean, we're going to have to do the original chair and potato wedges segment, aren't we?
I don't think I even have it recorded.
I mean,
that's the problem. Otherwise, I totally would.
I mean, eventually we're going to. That's what's going to happen. We'll have to, like,
reenact it.
No, not reenact it. Just redo it. I mean, it's a genius segment created by yours truly, so it can't be bad.
It can't be bad. I mean, he does all the research. He must know it must be good.
Right. I put all the time and effort into research and creating this,
Yeah.
Well, a segment that I made in 2 minutes can't be bad.
No, it can't. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Dungeoneered. See you next time.
Bye.